Welcome and thank you guys for joining us. For those of you that I don't know, my name is Evan Snow. I'm an arts advocate, community builder, creative entrepreneur, born and raised here in Broward County. That a few years ago got very passionate about pursuing my passions within the arts and culture, and I wanted to provide resources for the artists that I was building relationships with. So out of that, essentially this Zero Empty Spaces concept came about, where we activate vacant commercial real estate spaces so artists like these artists can be able to get a studio in a retail storefront type of environment on a month-to-month basis on a low monthly rate with the water and electric included. It's led to 28 locations over the last 4 years. We've had about 400 artists come through the program, changing hundreds of artists' lives thousands of times over, which we're very glad to do. So through that initiative and through wanting to provide more resource and support for artists, we decided to come up with a business-related workshop for artists to give artists insight and education and access to brilliant minds on pertinent topics. And we decided to kick this one off on something that everybody can benefit from, law and art, as it relates to art law. And thankfully, we have a very knowledgeable and passionate arts and entertainment. I know you do a lot of other things, attorney Jessica Shraybman of Shraybman Law, who's gonna, provide some much valuable insight with some questions that we have lined up for her. And then if you want more insight and you want maybe to have some professional services provided to you, if you have IP related issues, Jessica has some information here. You can follow up with her, and did offer a courtesy discount off services.
Anything for the community and the good work you're doing.
Thank you very much.
Can I get a t-shirt, by the way?
Yes, if we have extra small,
You can get it to me later.
we can give you a t-shirt. I'm not gonna give you her whole
Oh gosh.
her whole bio because it is kind of long. But
You gave one already, that was good.
that was pretty good.
Yeah, that was good.
Okay, well she's qualified and she's legit, and we're very glad to have her here. So I guess without much further ado, why don't you tell us just a little bit about yourself and kind of how you got either interested in art and how now your interests are taking place personally and professionally.
Sure. So, good morning. Thank you all for being here. Happy Saturday. My name is Jessica Shraybman, as Evan mentioned. Long story short, I always wanted to be an artist. To me, there was nothing cooler in life than being an artist. Unfortunately, I was the first in my family born in America, and my immigrant parents were like, "You are not going to art school." So I ended up in law school and kind of just knew that I always wanted to combine my passion for art with my savvy for business, and wanted to at least be able to work with artists and help artists, and it kind of just all came together, maybe a little bit by accident, but that's that. So I am a creative myself as much as I can in whatever ways I can, and helping artists, working with artists just makes me feel connected in that way, so.
And I know you've supported some noteworthy arts organizations and nonprofits, and what are some of the people that you've worked with down here in South Florida that maybe they might know or might not know?
Yeah, so I was at the Knight Foundation for a little while when I was in law school working in their arts department. I wasn't doing legal specifically, but more vetting potential grantees. I was part of the every year they have kind of their open bid for artists, and I participated in that. Really great experience. It exposed me to a lot of local organizations, some of the music organizations like Evan mentioned. I have worked with Radical Partners as well, and just a lot of local artists individually. I'm sure there are others that I'm not thinking of.
Guns.
Yeah, so that was the music organization I was referring to. And I worked with them in a number of different ways. I used to tutor for them. I helped a couple of their students through the SATs and college prep. That wasn't exactly art related, but and other organizations. So a lot of independent artists, that's for sure. Hi.
We have another arts and entertainment attorney that just joined us.
Oh, amazing.
Very nice. And then we have one of our favorite artists that's about to join us here in a moment.
Perfect.
But we'd like to start it off maybe for those that are either just getting started, maybe they've been painting at home and now they're ready to take it serious. What would you say is a good 101 or intro for artists that are now looking to go from like a hobby to something more professional?
Awesome. So I know that we have talked about the importance of having a business, which is certainly important, and I can speak to that. Hi.
Sure.
But something kind of very timely and that just comes up again and again are signing contracts. Like I can't beg you all more to not just sign contracts without fully understanding what it is that you are signing. I have just seen more, I'm not like a horror story type of person, but I have seen more bad situations coming out of artists signing contracts that they didn't fully understand than I have seen like happy ending stories, usually in the form of artists giving away more of their rights to their work or to their brand than they thought they were doing. Often it comes like in the form of them thinking that they're just licensing a specific piece for a specific purpose, but then it ends up being reproduced or sub-licensed or resold, or even them no longer owning the copyright to that work. So I'm not much of a beggar, but I plead all of you to just be very careful when you are signing contracts. But to Evan's, I know where Evan's mind is, which is very important as well, which is when you are kind of at a precipice and you're ready to make the commitment and to turn your hobby into a business, a very easy first step is just to file, probably for you all, an LLC. I think in the state of Florida, it's like $138.75 a year. It's in the greater scheme of things, you know, that's like the cost of a few paintbrushes or, you know, a number of yards of canvas. But the benefits of having a business entity where you can run your expenses through, when you have studio space, that becomes an expense that you can write off. It helps with your tax liabilities. It also, and this may not come up so much for artists who are just painting and selling their work, but it's not unheard of, for example, when an artist uses a certain medium and maybe a person that acquires that piece might have some sort of ridiculous allergic reaction to either like the enamel or you know, something within the artwork itself. Again, this isn't like,
Wow.
I wouldn't like go home and worry about it. Don't go home and worry about it. But more so, you know, if you are at an event, if you're doing live painting, or if you're being commissioned in a corporate environment or something, and something goes wrong in any way, having a business entity is, again, a very effective way to protect yourself distinct from your work. So those are really the two big reasons why we advise people to have a business. Number one, the financial benefit, and number two, the liability protection.
That was a very good example. I had not even thought about that. But just in summary, limited liability corporation protection, God forbid that person does have something happen as a result of buying a painting or as a result of your business. What is the protection that a LLC, in summary, provides to you as an individual?
So it separates your personal assets from your business assets. So let's say that you have a home or you have a car or whatever other assets you might have, those become shielded from any potential liability that might arise. I have seen it come up particularly in live art settings, where maybe somebody is working on live sculpture or they're using some sort of some setup and something happens, and then somebody who's in attendance gets hurt, and then people, especially in America, especially kind of post-COVID, are very litigation happy and they sue everybody involved. And then, you know, an artist who's over here like, damn, like I was just trying to cover my expenses today, gets pulled into something, and at least just having that separation so that, again, your personal assets, whether it's a car or a bank account or anything like that, can just get protected from that issue. Again, I wouldn't like go home and have nightmares about this stuff if you're like, oh my God, I don't have an LLC, I'm at risk now. But if you are out there, if you are doing things and you have $130 a year, I certainly advise it.
Yeah.
Again, I think especially for independent, smaller artists, it's the financial and tax benefits that are like I wouldn't say the more important, but the reason why I would really encourage you, because again, you can write off so much of your stuff, which will just help to offset, you know, your tax liability and things like that.
That is very good insight. And now something that you just kind of prompted, another that people also take for granted, is sometimes when people do live art events at a hotel or a venue, they ask for a certificate of insurance, a COI.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you think, oh, I don't really need to provide that COI, but in the event that, God forbid, something happens and somebody slips and falls, and you know, it's just now you actually have some financial protection in terms of this insurance policy to also further protect your personal assets, because nobody wants to lose their house, their car, their life savings, have their wages garnished just because they were pursuing their passion.
And if, for those of you who are considering forming a business and you're out there like if you're at events, like music events or art events, or again, like corporate events, any of that sort of stuff, I wanna say that general commercial liability, GCL insurance, is maybe like a few $100s a year for individual owners, small businesses. So if that's in the budget as well. Again, if you are somebody that's more like studio based and commission based, maybe that's not so important, but if you are somebody that's doing live art, that would be something to consider.
Hiscox is a good company that offers pretty straightforward $350 for the year.
What's the name again?
Hiscox, HISCOX. They're very easy. You go online, you put in some basic information, you pay, and they'll give you a certificate of insurance. And then as you go to venues, the venue will be the venue will generally ask to be either added as an additional insured or whatever their requirements are, and you can just literally go in, type in, you know, I'm doing live art at Gulfstream Park, and they'll give you a certificate that you can provide to Gulfstream Park that generally makes them feel better because it releases them of potential liability.
It just gives an extra layer of protection for them too. Yeah, should anything go wrong, they know that they have somebody that they can go after some money for, and it's not you, so it's a win-win.
And I have seen, unfortunately, even at it was a fashion show event, somebody slipped and fell at the W Hotel and got $75,000 just for slipping and falling, and he might have actually slipped purposely, but another story for another day. And we'll have some time for Q&A, so please, if anything comes up, please feel free to make a note in the meantime. But let's get to some more best practices here.
Sure.
I know some artists are now starting, you start in your home, then you get out of your home, and hopefully, fortunately, you're lucky enough, talented, skilled enough to get your work out into a gallery or into an office building. Could you maybe give some best practices or thoughts and insight regarding consignment and commission agreements?
Definitely. And maybe just so that I have a sense, do any of you do consignment commissions? Yeah. Okay, awesome. And are you usually signing some sort of contract with either? No? Okay.
Be very honest here.
Yeah,
I do sculpting and people commission me to do their boss because I'm very realistic.
Mm-hmm.
I've never signed it.
That's with like an individual?
Yeah.
Yeah.
One-on-one.
Sure. For those of you who are maybe being commissioned by, again, like or receiving a commission, yes, sorry, confused consignment and commission, from like a corporate entity, you know, like a lot of the like restaurants and nightlife and a lot of places actually commission from local artists to fill the space, like in hospitality, hotels are doing it a lot, and the cruise lines do it a lot. So again, making sure that it's clear whether, so there's a difference between commission and consignment, and there are different types of commissions. Sometimes it's a commission almost like for rent, other times it's a commission for a specific piece, whether the person commissioning has a specific idea in mind that they want you to create, or they're just asking you to create something in your own style, in your own vision. Having clear expectations about what they are looking for. In a situation where the art is having to be transported, whether it's long distance or short distance, something that comes up is where the title and what's called risk of loss gets transferred. So if, for example, you are transporting the art via a truck to its final destination, at what point have you done your job and now it's the person's piece and the risk and the responsibility is on them? So is it upon loading, basically, or is it upon delivery? For you as artists, you want it to be out of your hands as quickly as possible. The individuals commissioning the work will probably want it to be in your hands technically as long as possible. They will likely, kind of best case scenario for that person is that the title transfers to them as soon as it's shipped, but the risk of loss stays with you until it gets delivered. That's obviously like a win-win for them, right? In your case, you would want the risk of loss, and maybe the way I would negotiate that is to say, I'm happy to transfer title as soon as it ships, with the condition that the risk of loss also transfers as soon as it ships. And so if anything happens on the way, it is now your piece, and therefore it's your responsibility to make sure you take care of it. So also with consignments, and do any of you do consignments?
And maybe let's just give a
Yeah.
good example of
Sure.
consignment.
Okay. I'm curious to hear from you. When
I
you
had a
did
bad experience because I gave a lot of things to consign in Austin. I didn't bring the fine print, and 6 months later they kept a lot of pieces I had given them.
Were you here when I said
No,
about
I
the
just came in
contract?
and that was very
exactly.
painful
I'm
because
so
that
sorry
was
about
a lot of pieces that I just didn't know, and they didn't say anything, and I had no clue. And then I called them like 8 months later. I said, how come I'm not getting a check, for what you're selling? And they said, oh no, we kept the pieces. Did you read the contract? And I was like, what? And I had no idea. Till this day, I'll never forget that.
How long ago was that?
That was about over a year ago, a couple of years ago. Yeah,
Okay.
it's already
It
expired.
happens, unfortunately it happens too often, and that's why I think one of the reasons why we're here, and I don't think you have a problem with saying transparently, but
Yeah.
a lot of people take advantage of artists, or try to take advantage of artists.
Yes.
Hurts my soul, but
Yes.
when you have agreements in place, and you do have the fine print in place, and actually, as you continue to explain, if you could maybe talk through how you would go about, as you're having a conversation, you mutually agree that you want to give work for consignment, how you should stand firm and say, okay, well, these are terms.
Yeah. So, and just on the note of fine print, because we hear it all the time as attorneys, like, oh, it's just boilerplate, or oh, it's just the fine print. The fine print is usually the most important part. And people who are negotiating on the other side of the table from you are often going to put some very important things in the fine print. So make sure to read the fine print. I'm so sorry that happened.
Yeah, it was in the back of the pages, so they line up, they number and label everything I gave them.
And then there's like one
And then
section
no
that's
one
like
ever
this
said,
long.
and they were stable. I never saw it. And then when I go back and I said, where's my stuff? They said, well, it's in the back of the babies. I never, honestly, I never saw it. And 6 months, I thought I was doing an agreement for a year. I mean, the whole thing was like upside down. I was so, I'll never forget that. It hurts till this day.
No, I bet. Yeah, I bet that was a lot of your time and your effort and all of that. So to Evan's point, again, making sure that you understand so typically with consignment, it's an arrangement where somebody is selling on your behalf, right? They're representing you, they're negotiating for you, they are sometimes dealing with the marketing, with the publication of it, with the administrative aspects of it, and in exchange, when a sale is made, they keep a cut and they give you a cut. If it is a true consignment, then you are the owner of the work and they are in possession of your work. They take possession, but they do not take ownership. So, very important to be very clear. Is this a consignment where I maintain ownership until the pieces are sold? Or are you purchasing these from me and either, did they pay you anything up front? Was there like an advance or a purchase? Yeah, okay. So seems a little unusual, and it sounds very dirty. I don't like that at all. But again, typically you want to maintain the ownership until the piece is purchased by an acquirer. And then in that case, the person consigning takes their cut, which generally should be reasonable. And I mean, what people consider reasonable is different. I would base it on how much marketing they are doing of the sales. If it's in a gallery, where is the artwork being placed? Like, is it window front or is it in a back studio? You know, like how much exposure is the art receiving and how much promotion is the person doing? Are they dealing with the transportation and the insurance and all of that? The more responsibility that they have, which you want to be specified in your consignment agreement, that justifies more of a percentage. But if they're simply saying, yeah, we'll like place an ad and we're gonna drive sales and give you exposure and we want 50% or 60%, maybe that's not so reasonable. So think about how much work the person is doing to make these sales. Make sure that that is included in the contract. When I see contracts that just say, so-and-so will handle marketing. Okay, well, what does that mean? Where is it going to be published? How frequently, if they say, we're gonna include it in our newsletter. Okay, how frequently? What's the size? Where, what does it look like? Like, don't be afraid to get details and to ask questions. We were just talking about it this morning. I have always been the child that asks like a million questions. But candidly, I think that it's one of the reasons why I've become so good at what I do, because I have the information I need to make sure that I know that people are getting good deals, that they're not being taken advantage of. So don't be hesitant to ask questions to make sure that you have a clear understanding of what the relationship entails, and then to make sure that that's included in the contract. A lot of times the work that we are doing for artists is we tell them, okay, you tell me, what do you understand this deal to be for you? And then they tell us everything like, oh, I'm gonna supply X number of works, I'm gonna supply them over this period of time, they're going to be large format, they're gonna be small format, they're gonna be limited editions, they're gonna be one-offs, they're gonna be reproductions, whatever it is. The other person is going to put it in their newsletter once a week. They're going to handle all the packaging and shipping. They're going to deal with all the communications with the potential buyers. I'm like, okay, great. Then I go and read the contract. And I'm like, let's see if the contract you've been given matches the expectations that you've set. So step one is make sure you have clear expectations. And step 2 is make sure if you are signing a consignment agreement or a commission agreement or a license agreement, whatever it is, that it matches what your expectations are.
A perfect example of
Yeah.
that is when a lot of artists are starting out, they get excited because
Yes.
like a local cafe will
Yes.
say, oh, can I hang your work in my cafe?
Yes,
We'll put the prices on it.
yes.
And they don't even ask, well, how long will it be there?
Mhm.
Where will it be hanging? Who's responsible if it gets damaged, the whole thing? That's a really common.
That's a very, very good question. Who's responsible if it gets damaged? And granted, because we do work with a lot of small businesses, and so just to kind of defend the small companies as well, because a lot of small businesses have a lot of the same struggles actually that independent artists have. Like, they're breaking their backs, they're watching every penny, they have so much responsibility, they, are really just trying to make it work. And so for small businesses, especially like independently owned cafes, things like that, they may not have the knowledge or the expertise to even know to think these things through. So it's a great thing to ask these questions. And I always approach any deal that I'm responsible for, whether it's an artist's deal or a private investment deal, even a dispute, honestly, I always approach it in a manner of, we're here together because we see some potential in this combined effort, even if it's a dispute. Like, we're here because we see there's something, if, like at a bar, if somebody's like having too good a time and they like stumble back and the piece falls off the wall and it damages the frame, like, how are we gonna handle that? Those are very fair questions to ask, yeah.
I'm sorry, what's your name again? I can't raise.
No problem, Jessica.
And she has some info flyers here as well, so you can take them, and she offered, we mentioned on the intro that she could make personal consultations available, and will even offer a courtesy discount
Some
for
sort of
artists.
discounted pricing, if any of the things that we're talking about today ever become relevant for you all, I'm always happy to help the community, so.
This is
You, just real quick, sorry.
Yeah, I
You
just
wanted
have
to
a quick
ask
question.
something? Yeah.
On the opposite end, like what if, so I had a situation where somebody came to me and wanted me to commission a piece for their house.
Okay.
And it was for $5,000.
Okay,
They came to the house, I went to their house, we did this space, and we went over there, we did this whole thing, and they've had like 3 proofs, they've changed it, we've done
Okay.
all this stuff, we've
Okay.
put it up.
great question. Oh, okay.
So now, every time, I prided myself on not asking for a deposit for the longest time,
Okay.
because it's been years that I've never
You're
had
on
an
it.
issue. So now this is my
You're on
first
it.
time where it's my issue.
Yeah.
And they decide the day before it's getting delivered, we're gonna go in another direction. You were just at my house yesterday, and like, we love it, and now it's like, we're gonna go in another direction. This from yesterday.
Yeah.
Now I'm left with this like huge piece that I can't sell at a show because it's so big and it was fit for someone's special wall. So what should I be writing in these sort of?
Do you have a commission agreement that you use?
No,
Okay,
because I kind of prided myself on that. Whatever, I always wanted them to be happy with the work. So we'll make it until we'll tweak it, we'll start over, we'll do whatever, or we'll always sell it at a show. But in this particular sense,
Yeah.
it was so big that I can't sell it at a show.
Yeah.
So now I'm stuck. Luckily, I was able to get rid of it to somebody else, and then they offered to pay for materials, but they wanted to give me $200, and that was a joke. And then they ended up saying they'll give me $1,000. And then I said, how about this? If I sell it, I'll give you your 1,000 back, just to be fair. You know what I mean? Because I felt bad, and then,
you mean the person that had commissioned you?
right, that initially was.
Do you mind if I ask what the actual agreed price was?
Yeah, 5,000.
5,000.
So then I ended up having to bring it to a show, and I sold it like the next day, luckily, but not for what I wanted. I sold it for like $3,900.
Okay.
But still, I gave them their $900 back, and then at least I got rid of it because I was so worried because it was huge.
Wait, how did you end up in a situation where you were giving them money?
No, they gave me $900 for the material, and then I said, if it sells, I'll give you the money back, because they didn't take anything, like they didn't get anything.
Okay, yeah.
I felt bad, like that they were giving me $900 for my time, but I sold it. I ended up, when it sells, I'll give you your $900 back, when and if. Luckily it sold and then I gave them the money back. But moving forward, it kind of ruined it for the rest of everyone because I was always priding myself on not giving,
Yeah.
asking for a deposit or having them sign something.
Yeah.
And now it seems like I've learned my lessons and now it's like, what should I include in what should I have them sign and what should it say?
Totally. I have so many thoughts on this. Is it okay if I take a few minutes?
Sure.
If you are somebody that does a lot of commission work, I encourage you to have a commission agreement. You set your terms. It is your work. It is your sweat. It is your time. It is your commitment. People who are commissioning you can afford to commission you. Don't worry about them. Somebody who can't afford to commission you isn't going to. Okay? Secondly, I hope you are never in this situation again, but just in case anybody finds themselves in a similar situation, what I would have told the person is, you give me $1,000. If I sell this piece for more than the $5,000 that you promised to pay me, I'll give you some money.
But they didn't sign anything, like there was no.
But you negotiated
Right.
something, and good
They
for
offered,
you.
they offered though, they offered to give me money for materials and then they said 200 and I was like, that's a joke. And then they said 900 and then I said, but I'll give it back.
Don't ever offer that again.
I know, but I mean like, that was, I feel like that's fair in a way.
No, it's not. No, it's not. How much time did you spend on that?
I know.
No, I'm curious, how
You're
much
right.
time?
I mean, it was days, it was.
Everybody's definition of fairness is different.
Right,
We're Jewish, so our definition.
yeah.
But it sounds like we're all in agreement here that that was not fair to you.
Yeah, I wasn't, but I mean, at the same, to give me $1,000 and get nothing, like, that's
They
where I
got
felt.
something.
Yeah.
They got your commitment, your
Yeah.
effort, and you delivering on your promise.
Yeah,
And I
I
think
know.
that's, the thing is because I do a lot of commissions, I have, in my contract, I have a sliding scale. And so it's really your time that they're
Yes.
paying
Right.
for until you deliver.
Yes.
So I have a schedule in mind and it says we will meet in the beginning to, commiserate the whole thing. And then there's a time scale. So I meet a month, 2 months, or whatever it might be, and they agree upon it. If they back out after a certain point, then they owe me for all that time.
Yeah,
And
Yeah,
I don't have a problem with that.
yes. That is, milestones is a great thing to build into a payment structure. To your specific point about deposits, I'm telling you right now, and I'm like militant about this, we don't pick up a pen to start any work until we've received money from a client. Never. Ever. You never should start work until you receive some commitment from the people commissioning you.
they ask me all the time, do you want a deposit? I always say no.
Oh my gosh.
That's gonna change.
So I will not tell you what to do, but I highly encourage you to change that business habit. There is a terrible misconception amongst artists that if they run their art as a business, that it's gonna take away from their creativity.
Yeah.
And please let me break this myth for you and tell you I never say anything with absolute certainty, but with very near certainty that artists who run their art as a business are better artists because they have freed themselves of the worry and the anxiety of things like that.
And that's like my main thing is like, I want them to like it, I want them to feel at ease, I don't want you to feel like that anything will go wrong or that if you're gonna sign up for the $5,000 piece with me, but I promise you're gonna like it.
But here's the thing, if you have a commission agreement, you are bound to it just as much as they are. You are committing to deliver what you are promising to deliver.
But what if they don't like it?
So, well,
Well,
go ahead.
there's a lot of ifs and hypothetical questions, and we can go down those rabbit holes.
But do you write that in the contract if they don't like it? What do you do?
So I wanted to speak to revisions. Is it okay that we're continuing on this tangent? So I kind of think of two buckets of things as you're talking about. You kind of have like more standardized pieces, and then you have specialty commissioned pieces. And those are deserving of a little bit more detail. And I like the way that you do it where there are milestones. So I'm sure at first, like, you talk about the vision, you talk about the space, the lighting, the mood that they're going for, all of that. You can even like have an addendum to your contract with specifics on this. Like, this is generally what it's gonna look like. They agree to it. And you probably do that in the beginning, right? And let's say I'm commissioning from you. So we talk about it and I'm like, you know, this sounds like what I'm looking for. That's when I sign the contract and I give you my first payment. Do you usually have people come and like take a look at the work as it's in production?
Yes, and then halfway through, I
And
bring
then
it to
you
their
run it.
house, we go over it, we put it in the actual space, like I rent a
Exactly.
truck, like it's a whole thing.
Exactly. So that is another milestone. So at that point, again, how does it look? Is this matching the vision that you have? Yes, okay, great, second payment. And then, as it gets towards the end, and you have like a final viewing, like you did with these folks the day before, it still matches your vision, you love it, oh my gosh, I love it, it's everything I wanted, fantastic, final payment, and then delivery.
It could be 25, 50.
It can be whatever.
But there's like minor changes, like at the end, now there's a change, so now I can't make that the final because I have to do the change.
Well, but then you would have like another final.
Right,
Exactly.
and then that's when they cancel.
And that's when they, but you would have had
And I have to do
all
the-
of that
yeah,
payment
right,
beforehand.
sure.
I would probably leave physical manifestations of ideas. So when you have an idea and you create it into a tangible form. So you have a painting, you take a photograph. Choreography can be a little bit more difficult, but choreography can also be copywritten. Cinema, actually these days, programming can be copywritten, recipes can be copywritten, books, things like that. Trademarks protect your brand. So, hi, how are you? Good to see you. I saw your work in the back. It's so awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry I'm late. and
No, no
interrupting.
worries. Thanks for coming.
Could you just reframe the question because the recording cut off?
Yes.
Could you reframe the question?
Yes, yeah, so as being an artist, like I wanted to know the difference between having where to start having your business, having a trademark engine, or having or first having already the Pinterest or the piece, how you can register already, or having a copyright, or going through first into the trade engine to start your business, pretty much as part of the art business.
Can I just ask clarification? What do you mean by trade engine? You mean like being in the marketplace and selling your work?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So just to repeat for
Yeah.
posterity, no worries. So the three major kind of buckets of intellectual property that people think of are trademarks, copyrights, and patents. I'll just mention patents quickly because I think it's the least relevant for you all. Patents protect inventions. So I've invented a new insulated coffee mug that solves a technical problem. It's something novel, it's something unique. Inventions generally patents. Copyrights protect your creations. You had an idea for a painting, you painted it, you have created a copyright to it. It is ownership of, as I said, a physical manifestation of an idea into a tangible form. Whether it's art on canvas, whether it's sculpture, whether it's literature, whether it's music, choreography, all of these things, creations, basically.
That's one fee.
Copyrights, yes.
One thing.
C for copyrights, C for creations. Copyrights protect creations. And trademarks protect brand recognition. So are you an artist?
I'm an artist, but I've been into the digital and marketing, so I'm trying to see when you register like a simple logo, how that's considered as you copy that right first and then you trademark, or you do it the opposite?
Yeah, so typically if it is a representation of your brand name, so speaking of logo, like the Starbucks logo, for example, when you see the green circle with the white mermaid, you only think of Starbucks, right?
Right.
there is a very direct connection between the mind of the consumer and the source of the good. That is a trademark. It's the mark of your trade.
But is that someone created?
So logos can also be copywritten, yes, and I'm sure that Starbucks has a copyright on their design to protect the design as a creation.
So you do that first?
You do not have to do it first, no.
Oh.
You can register a trademark without having a copyright. You don't need any of these to have the other. You may, so logos are a great example because logos usually involve some sort of creation. You create like a design of something, so that is eligible for copyright protection. What that will protect is other people from using that design for any purpose.
Okay.
When you trademark that design as your logo, you are protecting yourself from people being able to use that trademark related to selling other goods and services.
Oh, good and service. Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's a very great question because you're right that logos can be copywritten and they can also be trademarked. When you are thinking about your logo in a way that you want to use it to represent you as an artist or your business, like if it's a marketing agency, you want to protect it for being recognized as the marketing agency that delivers the marketing services or as the artist that creates artwork, you want to trademark.
Okay.
There's various agreements there, agency agreements and different things that you can have in place. And I think the underlying thread of all these things is communication is key.
Yes.
And if you have it outlined in an agreement, it's that much easier, even though it might not be a fun and enjoyable conversation to have, but it's an important conversation to have, to say, let's go back to the agreement that we agreed upon.
And I will tell all of you, whether I'm your attorney ever or not, if you start using a commission agreement or a contract or anything like that, throw your attorney under the bus and just be like, I am so excited to do this work. My attorney will not let me until we work through some of these details. Like, I will be your imaginary attorney until the day that I have the honor of being
And
your
if you
actual
don't have her,
attorney.
you can also say, oh, my accountant said.
You're my accountant, yes, exactly.
I have a question.
Well, actually, we do have
Sorry.
some, we do have some programming we want to get through just to
Sorry,
make sure.
that's my
Yeah, no
bad.
problem,
Yeah.
it's all good, we will have time for question at the end. But definitely, communication is key, time equals money, you do have some best practices in play, some commission and consignment agreements that you can make available should they choose to work with you, that we can certainly get to. This is actually a great segue transition to the next question and talking point that we wanted to bring up on the intellectual property and licensing side of things.
Okay.
So maybe just some thoughts and best, I don't know if everybody considers your artwork your intellectual property. But it's something you came up with. So what would be some thoughts and best practices along those lines of how to protect yourself and your IP?
Yeah, so to the question, again, if you're having contracts are actually a very great way to protect your IP. I am not a sports person at all, but for some reason I always have the imagery of like a football team and there's the quarterback in the center and like the team all around protecting from all sides. And that's how I approach intellectual property for artists specifically and for creators. So you have your formal methods of protection, which are your trademarks and your copyrights and your patents, but you also have your contracts. And kind of it creates like a bubble around you so that you have multiple layers of protection. So even if you don't have a copyright registration or a trademark, but you do have a contract, you can include in your contract that you own this trademark, you own this copyright for purposes of a license, for example, that you are only licensing use of the thing for this specific reason, but you're not transferring ownership. And other considerations for licensing is whether it's sub-licensable, whether is it in perpetuity, meaning like is it forever or is there a term on it? Is it revocable, meaning like can you take back the license? Sometimes they're irrevocable, sometimes they're revocable, depending on what kind of the purpose is of the license will dictate some of this terminology. And because this is so relevant, are any of you familiar with the recent Supreme Court decision that just came down, Andy Warhol v. Not Ginsburg, oh gosh, what is her name? She is also a fellow tribe member. I feel so bad that I'm not thinking of her name.
It was Andy Warhol.
It was the Warhol Foundation and the artist that took the photograph of Prince. Goldsmith, thank you. So she had a license. She gave a license of, are you familiar with this case?
Loosely.
So totally fine. So basically for those of you who do or don't know, so Linda Goldsmith. She was a photographer that back like in the 80s when Prince was like really coming up, she was commissioned by, there are so many magazines involved, it was either Vanity Fair or Time Magazine or Newsweek, one of the major outlets. She was commissioned to take a photograph of Prince. They were doing a cover story on him. So she was commissioned, she took the photograph. Later, another news outlet licensed the photograph from her. They wanted to recreate it. I think it was when Prince passed away. So they wanted to do a whole nother cover feature on Prince. They licensed the image from her with the intention of, I'm getting my timeline confused. In any case, I think this was before he died, not important. They licensed from her this photograph with the intention of having Warhol recreate it into a Warhol illustration. In the license agreement, it was very specific and said that it was the one photograph for the one time for this specific cover story. Fast forward, as Warhol was known to do, he made a whole series of the Prince photographs, right? There were the orange Prince, probably the blue Prince, there was like 17 Princes. There was the orange Prince and the purple Prince. Those are the two that are most important. So when he passed away, that's when it happened. When he passed away, another major news channel, publication, wanted to license the original illustration from the Warhol Foundation to use in their cover story. They went to negotiate the deal, and then they saw, oh, there's this whole collection of these, and actually we want this one instead of this one. And they licensed the one that hadn't been originally licensed, printed it on the cover story, and Goldsmith reached out and was like, hey guys, copyright infringement. That happened in 2014, I believe, which can lead into a whole conversation about how to address disputes. It was in 2014. Just 2 weeks ago, we are, what year? 2023. So almost 10 years later, the Supreme Court got involved and finally determined, thankfully in her favor, that the use was not a fair use, which the Warhol Foundation was using as a defense. They said it was a transformation of the original, therefore it's not copyright infringement under fair use. The Supreme Court held, no, it's not a fair use because it's being used for the same purpose. It was initially used to do a story, to do a bio on this person, and now this new one is being used to do a story on this person as a bio. Not fair use, copyright infringement, and thankfully they ruled in her favor. And I've totally forgotten the question that you asked.
That was
license agreements.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because there's a financial and tangible economic impact.
Yes, of course. I mean, how much money did the magazine and again, it was either like Newsweek or Vanity Fair, one of the major ones, I don't know why it's slipping my mind right now. How much money did they make selling that special edition magazine? And the original license fee was $400.
Right, and if you ever notice, if you have any photographers, Getty Images, if you ever see, there's like a little C next to the photographer's name, the image is copywritten
Yeah.
to protect the photographer
Yeah.
who now is having their work distributed.
And so on that point, just going back to you as artists, and this quote has come up in a variety of ways, but basically from Dead Poets Society, like law and medicine, these are all noble pursuits, but we do them for beauty, for art, and for love. Like art is what makes life worth living. You all are some of the most valuable people and creators that we have in the world. Don't undersell yourselves. When someone says to you, we're gonna give you exposure.
Run!
Yes. Yes, exactly. Exposure ain't gonna pay your bills.
Can't need exposure.
You can't need exposure, exactly. Exposure is great, but that is the cherry on top of a well-negotiated deal. Even if they say in the case of Goldsmith, she got credit. She got source credit on the original photo. I don't know that, that like tiny print in the corner of the photograph, I don't know that like entirely changed the course of her career,
Sure.
So just to your point
Sure.
about the copyright, the credit acknowledgement is wonderful. Getting paid for your talent and your time is much better.
And these are just some good, and I appreciate you sharing that, because these are some good best practices to think about and keep in consideration. I'm actually going to use this artist as an example here. Alejandra Palacios this is not the piece, but she created work for Gulfstream Park, where we are, which is a horse racing track. And you guys might think, Gulfstream Park, oh, this place, whatever, maybe it has traffic one day, maybe it doesn't another day. Well, Gulfstream Park, little did we come to find out, ended up hosting the largest purse horse race in the world, the Pegasus World Cup. So you never know how you might create something for a little local racetrack, horse racing place, and then they have a concert with Dave Grutman and Snoop Dogg and Pharrell and Lenny Kravitz are here. And this was on and her work actually got shown on NBC TV. And little things like that. So if you set yourself up for success, if you protect yourself, you protect your assets, you protect your best interests, it's going to help. You never know when you're going to get on Telemundo, Televisión, El Nuevo Herald one day as a result of the work that you created. So it's best to set yourself up for success. One other last one I'll just mention, you mentioned irrevocability or revocability, or even transferability. Unfortunately, in the building that I live in, gallery and an artist provided artwork on consignment to the building when it was built, and it had Management Company A. Well, Management Company A folded, and Management Company B now has the management. Management Company B tried to tell the gallery owner, oh, we don't have that contract. It's our artwork. And it's very clear, this artist, this gallery provided the residency, exhibition, curation, and promotion of this artist's career.
When did that happen? Like recently?
Recently, yeah.
So you'll call me about this later.
Yes, it's like $20,000 worth of artwork.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, sorry, we don't have the agreement, that company lost it. Well, that's not good enough.
Well, they would have their like asset purchase agreement, and I would be very curious to see what assets were included in the purchase, because if it doesn't say, does your person have a copy of the contract?
We could talk about that. Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
Oh, well, if they have a copy of their contract.
Correct, but the new management was like, oh no, sorry, we don't have it. I'm like, oh, that's actually not good enough. Like, because people will downplay and say, oh, don't worry about it. Like, oh no, they'll just try to downplay, but the contract speaks volumes.
Yes, absolutely. So you might want to consider things like change of control. So if you are dealing with a larger entity, what happens in the event of a change of control? And you can include in there that in the event of a change of control, that essentially the obligations and responsibilities of your agreement transfer into that change of control. So that's a very good thing to bring up, because that's not typically something even that I think about.
Sure.
But that's
It's a good best practice.
Yeah, totally.
One other best practice we want to get to, and we'll be respectful of your time, so just have a couple last questions here. Something we advise and something that artists that I've noticed that are successful integrate as a best practice is a certificate of authenticity. You mentioned earlier to me that I wasn't really, thinking about, is it helps establish provenance. It's a value add. What are some other, things to consider, for establishing a certificate of authenticity when you're creating work and transferring work, selling work?
Yeah, definitely. So also just out of curiosity, how many of you bother with certificates of authenticity? Oh, great. Okay, awesome. So, and just like a personal anecdote, so a couple of years ago at Art Basel, there was a piece that I loved. It was literally, it's like this size, and I think it was like $400, like not a huge thing. And I asked, I was like, by chance, do you have a certificate of authenticity for this? And they did, and I was like, perfect, sold. I would have bought it either way, but the fact that it came, even like this little small thing, came with a certificate of authenticity, gave me, as I mentioned to you, like, not that I questioned whether it was real or anything like that, because obviously I was at Basel and most of that is pretty well vetted, though I do think that, fraud might still happen. Anyway, but it gave me as a purchaser an added level of assurance that this is real, that it has established value, and in a way it makes that piece more valuable to me in the event ever should I decide that I want to resell it or something like that. I think the analogy that I had never used before but just thought of today is like, it's like having a fancy dog or having a fancy dog with papers. The same fancy dog, but somehow having the papers makes it like even more valuable. But there are, legitimate reasons to having certificates of authenticity, especially if you are in international trade. So if you are creating overseas, so actually, just as a fun personal anecdote, at a certain point in my life, I was living in Russia and I had created some artwork, and in order to bring it to America, I had to go to like their consulate of like fine art or whatever, the consulate of culture, whatever it was, and I had to get a certificate of authenticity for my thing to prove that it wasn't stolen, that it was mine, and I had the rights to transport it. So for those of you that either work abroad in transport or if you transport abroad, not all jurisdictions require it, but some do require certificates of authenticity to prove that it's not counterfeit, that it's not forged, and that you actually have the right and title to transport.
And I'll double check the notes, but there was a gentleman in West Palm Beach, a gallerist, that just got sentenced to federal prison this week for selling counterfeit Basquiat, multiple counterfeit paintings, and apparently the certificates of authenticities were forged, and I believe the person that purchased these works is now able to reclaim their funds through the legal process.
Yes, exactly. Yes, that's a good point. Was that the case where
Daniele?
I don't know the name, but actually my father, shout out to my dad, was telling me about, it was like a whole collection of Basquiats, and the way they found out that they were forged was because he often like painted on like cardboard boxes and things like that. The person that had forged them had used a cardboard box from like that year as opposed to the year that Basquiat was around. And so they caught like, I think it was maybe like the company name or something, and somebody realized like, wait, this company wasn't around when Basquiat was alive and painting, and that's how they caught the forger.
I think that was actually the Orlando Museum of Art, which was even bigger scale.
Oh, okay.
Which was, really shady.
It was FedEx? Oh, that's so funny.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So,
That's how they-
Yeah.
I have a quick question on the certificate of authenticity. I feel I've been using it for a long time. What really makes it valid? Because I just went through, mine has a seal too, I have a seal as well. But there's nothing in the contract, it's just something I went to the store and did. Do you need to go another step just to make it genuine, or it's just,
Oh, interesting. Are you a
Authenticated.
notary?
I didn't use notary in this case. Yeah, but I had it well done, I didn't have a seal on it, and people like it when I give it. But then I'm just thinking, if, say like I'm going to court with somebody, say to prove something, it's just something that I did in my own house.
I actually don't know the answer to that.
To authenticate it,
To actually be able to authenticate it. The only time I've dealt with certificates of authenticity have been through institutions, which are registered and they basically have the license to authenticate. That's interesting. I'm gonna look into that though, if I can let you know if that makes it like an official certificate of authenticity, or if you have to have like a registration or a license to authenticate something.
Yeah, because even like artwork, people do, most artists just put like a little C there,
Right,
but they don't do anything about it.
Right.
Somebody says, oh, that's corporate.
right.
It's nothing.
That's interesting. I'm gonna look into that. Can I
we'll,
check in with you later and let you know what I find about that?
we'll definitely follow up on that. That is a very good question, because people can forge anything, and then even the paperwork, so on and so forth, so hopefully there is some governing, I believe there is some,
I've only dealt with it through like regulated institutions.
Wow.
So maybe I've just taken that for granted that they have to be, but I'm wondering now if the person authenticating, because oftentimes there's a notary involved, but so I wonder if just having it notarized makes it official. It's very easy to become a notary though. I think it's like $50 and you can become a notary. And then when you stamp it, but I wanna look
Yeah.
into that.
Yeah, you can't notarize certain things.
True,
Somebody else would.
true. Yeah.
I think the future is going to be on the blockchain.
Oh,
well,
goodness.
that's actually what we're
goodness.
getting briefly next, a quick thing.
And just a question to clarify my understanding of this past conversation. Like my husband Dave, he does photography, and when he does, if it's one-on-one, he'll put it, like, you can buy certificate of occupancies and put it on the back.
On the back.
And he signs it and numbers it and blah, blah, blah. So that's
Where
when you were
does he
talking
buy
about,
them from?
I don't know, it was
Okay.
some place that
But
had
it's
like
like an issuing.
archival paper and stuff like that, because everything that he's, would do for
Like
that.
a framing store, like an art supply store?
Yeah, online.
Okay.
So certificate of occupancy, that's all I ever thought of. I didn't know that from my understanding now, that you have to like
Authenticate it.
yeah, like a license or registration through a particular company in order to do it.
That's what I'm saying, I'm like questioning now, because again, the only time I've dealt with it has been through like
Right.
a gallery or an agency or something like that, so I might have had the misunderstanding that you have to be licensed or registered to do it, just
Okay.
because the entities I've dealt with themselves are licensed and
Yeah.
regulated.
If you could like send us an email on that would be amazing. if
You
you
go
could.
research it, and then if nothing else in the
Saturday
Facebook
homework.
event page, I'll put it in there. I made some great notes that I want to share, and then we'll share the video replay.
Is it okay if Evan shares with me your contact information?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Before you leave transport, this will be really quick, but before you leave transport, when I moved from San Diego to Florida, I was smart enough to document everything in my house, all my work, because some of them were commissions and I was moving this
Yeah.
stuff, and they were huge pieces.
Yep.
Unfortunately, the moving company stole 6 of my big pieces, and I documented it. I went to my attorney and I said, what do I need? The insurance company needs, like business separated from the whole thing. And so it's really important that you make sure that with your insurance company, your attorney and the whole thing, that those things are documented before you. I did get paid for everything.
Oh, good. Did. Good. I'm so glad.
She doesn't mess around.
I love it. Yes, you're a role model to all artists. Yes.
So
And
you-
also, sorry, just a testament that a creative can be a business savvy person. And do you feel that it has taken away from your creativity?
Absolutely not.
Has it, like, have you gotten a sense of like freedom in knowing that all your ducks are in a row, or
I
does
don't
it?
have to worry about that part of it, and that's the nice part.
Right.
It's like
I'm so
all
happy
of
for you.
the legal documents that were drawn up for me, it makes it simpler because like that milestone we were talking about,
Mhm.
where I have milestones, it's, you know, you do things for friends, you do things for people you know, and Evan knows I have some clients that are like, you know,
High
kind
maintenance.
of things. But, no, not headache, they're, you know, they're well-known kind of.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
But you don't have to get your emotions involved in it. And
Yeah.
that's a lot of the times where we get in trouble. We're like, oh, they didn't like that part of it. Look, you came to me as a creative. I'm at this point, we've agreed to this point. Now, you're not gonna see it until it's done.
Good for
And
you.
I've got enough, you know, in my contract, I have enough to cover all of my working costs and my supplies and everything. If they decide at the end they don't want it, I'm good with that, you know, but don't get your emotions involved.
Good for
Get it
you.
all in writing, take pictures of everything, you know, document, check the small
I love
print.
hearing that.
Yeah,
Good for you. I'm so happy for you.
thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, now, not exactly on the blockchain, and we're not gonna get into NFTs, because I think that moment has passed.
Yeah.
Though the future it has purpose, but that's another conversation for another day. There's some very interesting developments that I'm sure you guys are aware of with artificial intelligence, machine learning, as it relates to art, not just ChatGPT, but there's some really interesting stuff going on with Midjourney, DeviantArt, and what would be some things that maybe artists are considering or not considering yet regarding the evolution of this new space.
So we were talking about this before we started this talk, and artificial intelligence. Let me start by saying a lot of wonderful use cases for it. I've spoken with a lot of creatives in a variety of industries that are able to work with it as a tool to help them be more productive, to increase their creativity, almost like Photoshop on steroids in a way for some of these folks. But we have also seen how it is having negative consequences for artists. So the Midjourney and DeviantArt issue that Evan is referring to is basically an AI tool that a lot of these tools are pre-trained on existing information. So they're fed a whole bunch of information to build out their algorithms so that they can then respond to prompts and things like that. So this one in specific was trained on images of other artists, some of them I think publicly available. Publicly available does not mean in the public domain. People confuse those things a lot. So publicly available images, but copywritten images. So the tool was trained with a whole bunch of this stuff so that now you can give a prompt to say, bye-bye, create for me an image. The example I used earlier, create an image for me of a dog walking through the desert with a camel in the style of Salvador Dali. And it will produce something like pretty freaking convincing or very much in line with the style. Some of these tools are very, very good. The problem that is starting to happen is that people are using these tools to create images and music and other work in the style of specific creators, and then they are selling these things. And in this case, the artist, her name is Kelly McKinnon, and there are a few others. I think it's actually a class action lawsuit. The people selling these in the style of images are making more money than the artists have ever made in their lives.
That's always the case though.
So it's it's sickening in a way. And it's sold as, image of dog in desert with camel in the style of Dali. So there are a bunch of arguments, and there's so many parties involved now. There's the developers that created the AI tool, so are they responsible? There are the individuals that are running the prompts and creating the images and then selling the images. Are they the ones responsible? Is the AI even creating something that is copyrightable? It's a very, very, very complex thing. I mentioned to Evan that I definitely have my opinions on it, and I'm also very curious. I haven't done this yet. I have a very long list of things to do. This is one of the 107 things on that list. But I want to read, and this is another good point, the terms and conditions of DeviantArt. I suspect that what happened, are you all familiar with DeviantArt? Do you know this? Or what are some of the other websites?
I see where you're going, like with Lensa, the thing that people use, you uploaded your image and it made an AI generated image, you gave your rights away to that image.
So it's not the image, so yes. So DeviantArt is a platform. It used to be used as a marketplace. And there are other websites, I don't know why the names are escaping me.
Artsy, Saatchi.
All of them, yes, exactly. Where you as an artist can upload your work for sale on this marketplace. I suspect that in the terms and conditions of DeviantArt, that one of the terms is that when you upload images of your work, you haven't transferred your copyright ownership, but you have given them a license to use that image for other purposes. So now, DeviantArt, and again, I'm not sure that this is what happened. This is something, it's just a hunch that I have. So when DeviantArt partnered with Midjourney and the other one that I can't remember, they probably were the ones that sold the data that was used to train the AI, which then technically was not a copyright infringement if by me uploading my artwork, I have allowed DeviantArt to use my work for other purposes.
Interesting.
Yes, it's very complicated. It's very complicated and very fascinating. I am always rooting for the artists, and I hope that, I think that the liability, it's hard to say who is liable if things are done above board, which, if I were on the defense side, I can see how that argument can be made. But at the end of the day, there is damage being caused to a creator.
Yes.
And there needs to be some way to compensate people for that. So I'm paying attention to this. This is a new case. As I mentioned, I think it's in a lower court right now. I expect that there's going to be a decision, which I expect regardless of the decision, it's going to be appealed and then appealed again and appealed again. I'm very curious if this is something that's going to get up to the Supreme Court. If it does, it's going to be years from now. But again, talking about the fine print, all terms and conditions, and I'm guilty of it too. Yes, check the box. I read the terms and conditions. I did not read the terms and conditions, and I just, gave away the rights to my house for all I know. We're all guilty of it. But if you can practice a little bit of patience and check the fine print, at least you are informed of what you're getting into.
And you just brought up an interesting thought. You go to some art galleries, like the ones in the Keys actually specifically, where they say no photos, and a lot of times we kind of just laugh it off. Well, do it. Maybe not on record on the camera, but you laugh it off. Why wouldn't you want me to take a photo to promote you? But to this point, you never know. That person taking the photo could then be replicating the image for their profit, and you'll never know.
So that's what happened, since you all are from around here, the A-Hole Sniffs Glue. Are y'all familiar with that artist? A-Hole Sniffs Glue. He's a local. He started as
It's
a.
legit.
He is super legit these days. He started out as a street artist, like a tag, a graffiti artist. I'm sure you would recognize his work. It's the eyeballs, like the drunken eyeballs. So he had a court case. It was against American Eagle. So they had posed some models in front of one of his murals and took a photo of these models like wearing, like paint stained overalls and hats. Yeah, it's David, right? And they were using it in their advertising. And he sued them for copyright infringement. I was really hoping to see that one through. He settled. I think he settled very handsomely, and it put him on the map in a whole new way. But yes, to your point about taking photos, like we think it's like, oh, I'm just taking this photo so that I can remember it later. But then it ends up on an American Eagle website, and American Eagle's making, millions of dollars off of those paint-stained overalls. So,
And if they went about it the right way, American Eagle has millions of dollars that they could have paid in a contractual agreement, could have done things different ways, as many other brands could have.
Yes.
But once again, if you have the conversation, the communication, and the contract, that's gonna make these issues hopefully null and void, and hopefully there is a good equal exchange, even exchange, a monetary exchange, that everybody is in agreement of. And if there isn't an agreement, well then that's when attorneys come in and help argue on behalf of the client.
so I wouldn't say argue on behalf of the, negotiate on
Yes,
behalf of the
thank you.
client. But also, I mean, to your point, like, know what is important to you. And just like in life in general, with the people that we have relationships with, in any capacity, if there's something that is important to you, if you have a boundary on something and the person that you are trying to collaborate with is not respecting your boundaries or your must-haves, like, be prepared to walk away. Usually those just, if it seems like it's gonna be a nightmare, it usually ends up being a nightmare. And also to that point, unfortunately, sometimes big companies will kind of roll the dice because they've got all the money in the world and they don't have to really worry about things because they can afford to, push out the little guy, or to, like, what is the saying? I don't know it because I don't live by it.
Oh, it's better to apologize and ask permission.
Yes, exactly. Better to ask for forgiveness than for permission. Exactly.
I live by that.
But so a good, like, moral, and anthropology has been guilty of it. Like, companies that as artists we think, like, these are such creative companies, like they must have good philosophies, but anthropology actually many times has, to be frank, like, ripped off small artists
Oh my God.
and sold things. But the good thing as artists to know is that there is recourse, like, you can do something about it. It may not always feel like it's probably not gonna be easy and it's not gonna be quick, but you do have recourse, even if you don't necessarily have a contract or something like that. There was just one other thing I wanted to mention about that. Big companies. It's okay, it'll come to me later.
It's important that, so clearly I think we're all in agreement and understanding that it's good best practice to have contracts, to
Yeah.
have good legal representation, and all of those things.
Such a good salesperson, thank you.
I just settled a TTAB case I told you we were working on.
Oh, yeah.
What I had a trademark for my nonprofit, and some rightfully so,
I just remembered.
and some big company that shared the same acronym in 3 letters that we use that had been around for a long time, people kept saying, oh, you guys are them. And we're not. We did something completely different. They were in the hobby aquarium space. We deal with the ocean and saving the reefs. and they threatened to litigate us to death, and if we didn't, give up. And fortunately, we actually had a very big firm take us on pro bono and push back on them, and they ended up giving us a donation to voluntarily change our logo, our acronym. We added a letter on the end, and that sufficed their requirement.
Awesome.
And now we have to rebrand and go through that. But I never would have imagined, like,
Does the donation cover all of that?
yeah, correct.
Okay,
It was nice. It was a nice donation.
Great.
Yeah. So I never would have thought, like, when I did the trademark initially, like, oh, no one's ever. We're an ocean conservation nonprofit working to save the reefs. Nobody's gonna try to screw us. You never know what's gonna happen.
Yeah.
You never know who's gonna pop up with, similar idea, similar thing. So that's a good best practice. So if they would like to also learn best practices and stay connected with you, where can they find you on social media, on the interwebs, and what's your info?
Shraybman is my last name, which I realize is not the easiest to remember. Yes, I think we left some business cards there and there. My name is all over that stuff. Shraybman Law, we have a website, we're on Instagram, LinkedIn, we're everywhere. Not on Twitter yet. Show of hands, how many of you use Twitter?
Not anymore.
Oh, okay.
In opposition.
Oh, okay. I'd be curious to hear more about that. I've never used Twitter.
I stopped as well.
Oh, okay.
Because of ethics of Elon Musk.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So is it best, so I have attorneys in California.
Mm-hmm.
Is it best, now that I'm on this coast, to have attorneys on this coast because they're more familiar with?
Are you domiciled here now?
Yes.
But you do work all over the US. You're probably fine. It's probably cheaper here, but you're probably fine. California has a lot of very impressive attorneys with very impressive attorney's fees. But I don't think you need to. Yeah.
Just for the record, email address, website.
Jessica at shraybmanlaw.com. SHRAYBMAN. Would have been smarter to change my name to Chan when I got married, but I'm very committed and I've already done all the branding. Website is shraybmanlaw.com. Pretty much Shraybman Law, it's like only my family in the world, so you'll easily find me. And again, we have some information about copyrights and a little bit of stuff about business, just some free resources for whatever, and again, my name is all over it, so.
So we will let you guys have some time to ask some additional questions, but before we get there and wrapping up, obviously we're Zero Empty Spaces. You can find us at zeroemptyspaces.com, on Zero Empty Spaces on Instagram. So this was our first in a series of business workshops to bring in experts to share about relevant topics as it relates to art and your artistic practice. Some future workshops you actually kind of alluded to, we are going to do one on ChatGPT and Midjourney and AI to how you can use them for your betterment.
Totally.
Even things like branding, bringing in a branding expert, bringing in somebody that's very good with Instagram Reels to talk through some of their practices and how it's helped this artist be full-time professional off of her Instagram Reels. And we're going to bring in my yoga teacher and coach and friend to talk about burnout, mindfulness for artists and creatives. When you hit that rut, how might you get out of it quicker? I'm about to go on holiday for a couple weeks to Europe, but when I get back, we'll publish them and schedule them. We wanted to start here now. We're very grateful for Jessica and the team to be here supporting us today. And then you can find out more on Zero Empty Spaces. You can find out more if you guys don't follow Choose 954, social movement we started to cultivate culture and community, keep people to know the great things that are going on, make this a better place to live, not just a better place to vacation. We do some other really cool free events that we've actually done here. We do a potluck for artists that we do now kind of quarterly, so we'll do that when I get back. It's a great event that we generally host here to bring artists together to connect and engage, inspire, share stories, make connections, and get great resources out of it. We also host a monthly breakfast lecture series, a mini TED Talk that we host for free every second Friday morning of the month. It was where I initially had my aha moment that led me down this path of arts, culture, community building, and creative entrepreneurship. So I pay it back, pay it forward, and continue hosting it. We're about to celebrate our 5-year anniversary this Friday. and I'm very excited to share my story for the first time with the community. It's at the gallery inside the library, the Alvin Sherman Library, on the campus of Nova Southeastern University. The doors open at 8:30, the talk starts at 9, we're out of there by 10, free event, coffee, breakfast, guided meditation by Chloe to help us all get in a Zen state as well. That's called Creative Zen. You can find that on Choose 954. And if you like all that stuff, I'm also getting ready to release my first book about this path I've been on with all this crazy stuff and some of the learning lessons that I've acquired along the way, learning to choose art, community building, learning to choose a business partner, learning to choose yoga, learning to choose self-care, men's work, and some other really great things in there as well. Psilocybin, boiler room. So
Can we just take a second to like
I know.
it's beautiful. Jessica and I actually met the day I left recruiting for the first time in 2015, and actually went to a Jupiter Circle meetup with Gabby Guzman.
With Gabby,
And you never know who you're gonna meet, how your paths are gonna cross and connect, and you know where that could lead to. So it was a beautiful thing. Yeah, you can follow us, and always ask us a question. We're open books. Appreciate you guys being here. I will let you ask a couple questions. I don't want this to turn into the consultation now.
Oh, it's fine.
You know what I mean? And be respectful of your team's time as well. So maybe just a couple basic questions, and then if you have something more specific and in depth that you want to work with Jessica on, she will make herself available at a discounted rate to artists. Fair?
Yeah, totally. My pleasure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Is your information okay with you? Is your information okay with you?
Okay, a couple of questions. Before I go online, I had a friend told me to make sure I record and I almost mail to myself so it's dated evidence of when I made some of my work.
On the relationship.
All right, thank you.
Again, a copyright registration, it costs like a few $100s. So depending on, you do a little bit of cost benefit analysis, and it doesn't hurt, it never hurts to have a registration. There's never a reason not to.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
So your office handles copyright patents and also trademarks. Okay.
And now even has more resources.
Yes. We just acquired another law firm based in Boston that has specialized only in intellectual property for about 23 years. And we have absorbed their team as well. So now we have
That's great.
somebody much smarter and much more capable than I handling
More
all of
experience.
More experience, I'll give it more knowledgeable, better at handling people, she's just everything. I adore her so much, I'm so thankful. We have a team that does all that.
So if we want to, like myself, I think I'm really impressed with what you had to tell us today.
Oh God, I'm so glad.
So I was just thinking of calling your office, but just to get into some specifics, I just needed to know the ballpark figure on some of this, like contracting in particular.
It is all different. It's all different, and as Evan mentioned, I've offered to extend some discounted pricing. So, and we can have a conversation for free. It's not gonna cost you anything. I'd be happy to learn about what you're doing and what you might need, and to give you some feedback and quote you some pricing if that's needed.
Great.
Yeah.
So thanks for all this knowledge. My concern as an artist is in the weeds. It's like if you're doing installation in different states, how you can collaborate, or maybe let's say this piece, if you wanna copyright that piece, but then you realize that it's unfinished, or there's something that you wanna extend, or you wanna have bigger pieces. Do you copyright after, before, or if you're extending some piece or collaborating with another artist, and there's a structure behind that of engaging with artists to if you see an unfinished piece?
Yeah, so wait for the piece to be finished. You can always have multiple copyrights also, so, you know, if you've created this and you think, oh, it's finished, and you copyright it, and then you come back to it and say, actually, I think it needs 2 more panels, and you finish it, you can do another copyright. It's a good thing that you mentioned about collaboration, just because we had an issue with this recently where some creatives collaborated on something, and again, this goes back to contracts. If you're collaborating on something and you're intending to sell it, license it, do whatever with it, or if it's a project that you're being commissioned for, I also encourage like a collaboration agreement or something like that to establish like, who owns this? Do we both own it? Or are we collaborating, but I'm like bringing you on to like, give me some thoughts or help me, like, you're just helping me, but we're not co-owning this, or are we co-owning it? Because there can be multiple owners to a single copyright. So when you are collaborating,
How should I do my research before?
I would advise that you just have a conversation with the person that you're collaborating with.
Okay.
Why are we creating it? What's the purpose? Like, is it gonna be sold? Is it going to be commissioned? Are we going to be co-owners? Like, do we both own this copyright? Who has the right to sell it? If we both have the right to sell it and we're both just out there trying to get this piece sold, how are we splitting it?
I'll
Is
give
it
you-
50-50?
I'll give you a very good, quick, real-world example. There is an artist that's a painter, and there's an artist that makes sculpture. The artist that paints wanted to learn from the artist that makes a sculpture. The artist that makes a sculpture taught them for free, thinking they were friends. They were friends. You can see what it's.
We know this person.
You know this person.
Okay.
The artist that paints got a very big commission from a very big liquor company to do an installation in their office that they never would have done, and they never would have known how to do because it was a very, very specific type of sculpture. That artist that paints, that now did this sculpture, did not give my friends a nickel, or even say thank you, or even tell them until she saw it, the artist saw it on social media of the painter, and they go, wow, how did you do that? When did you do that? And that artist is very shady, and it was a lot of money, and could have given the artist that they learned from a nickel, a thank you on the social media post, and didn't do any of that. But if you would have had an agreement, and unfortunately it was a learning lesson for everybody, but you know, that's why it's good. Even, I'm glad you mentioned collaboration, or like joint venture, or like, and you go into these things with the right intention. You do a non-profit project, you're raising money, you know, you're trying to help out somebody, you know, everybody goes into it innocently enough, but then you never know, if something happens, maybe, you know, somebody comes along and says, oh, let's take this to the next level, I'm gonna throw $1 million into it. And then money changes a lot of things for a lot of people, so I really appreciate you sharing that, because hopefully now you'll be that much more willing, wise, prepared, able to say, all right, let's just take a step back for a second, let's just put this down on paper.
And just,
So, sorry, copyright
Thank you.
equal
Thank you.
registration.
you
Develop
can get a
copy.
registration on a copyright. You do not need a registration to have a copyright. When you create something, you have the copyright to that thing.
Okay.
If you have to enforce your copyright, that's when you need a registration.
And is it safe, legal to put the C by?
You can always use the C, yes. You can always use the C to claim that is your copyright.
Okay.
Yeah.
If you filed and paid or not.
I mean, I tell people that they can just use it to like put people on notice. Where there's the difference is like with trademarks. With trademarks, you use the TM to say that you are claiming a trademark. Once you actually have a trademark, that's when you use the R.
But trademarks go through the USPTO.
USPTO. And copyrights go through the Copyright Office, so they're separate. Yeah.
I think that was a really great session.
Great. I'm so
I know we're gonna save somebody a lot of time and a lot of money and a lot of headache.
Oh, I hope so.
I have one little question, but, is it okay? it has to do with 3D printing, you know, when you go on a mass production, bigger scale, you know, how do I protect myself with, you know, that's different, it's a manufacturing, but some people, you know, later on.
It can still be copywritten. It's like sculpture.
Okay.
It can be copywritten. Yeah. You would submit design images of it.
Okay,
Mhm.
awesome, thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.